Hello, friend. Don't look behind you while I'm telling you a story. Story 1. I rented that cabin because it was unbelievably cheap. Not suspiciously cheap, but the kind of cheap that makes you feel lucky. Like you just stumbled on a once-in-a-lifetime deal. It was deep in the Appalachian woods, about a 2-hour drive from the nearest town. An old wooden cabin, low foundation, slanted roof, surrounded by a forest so thick it looked like black ink, with a silence that felt suffocating. I chose it because I needed quiet. Because I had just lost someone, my mother. After weeks of watching her waste away in bed with an illness the doctors didn't even bother to name. I just needed a place where no one could find me. No questions. No funeral. No pitying hugs. And that cabin felt like the perfect disappearance. The landlord didn't say much. An old woman with white hair and ash gray eyes. She stared at me when I signed the rental papers. She said, "The key's under the step to the porch. Don't call me if you need anything." No signal, no Wi-Fi. I nodded. That was exactly what I wanted. The first day I just slept. Slept like I'd never slept before. No traffic noise, no alarms, no people, just the sound of the forest. In the day, it was the wind whistling through tree gaps. At night, there were rustling sounds from somewhere unknown, maybe squirrels, maybe small animals, maybe just wind. I didn't care. I just wanted to vanish. The second day, I walked deeper into the woods. The forest edge near the cabin wasn't. Too thick sunlight still made it through enough to see the path, but only a few steps in and the light disappeared. The darkness in those woods wasn't like night, it was heavier, like it had weight, like it pressed down on your shoulders. Some trees I swore I'd already passed, but when I turned back, they were in different spots. The smell of damp rot, the crunch of dry twigs underfoot, and the unshakable feeling of being watched began to cling to me from that point on. That night, I heard knocking. Not loud, just 3 soft knocks, enough to pull me out of a foggy dream. I didn't open it. I stood by the door, heart pounding, eyes fixed on the peephole. No one. But as I stepped back, it knocked again. Still 3 times. Still soft. Still no one. I told myself I was imagining things. I'd read somewhere that loneliness can make you hallucinate. I turned off the lights, went back to bed, and tried to sleep. On the 3rd day, I saw footprints. Right in front of the porch where I had swept off leaves and snow just the day before. Not human prints. Too long, the toes dragged, and there were claws at the ends. I wanted to take a picture, but my phone had died the day before. That was the first time I started to regret coming here. But I didn't leave. Something held me back, not fear. Exactly, but like I was being kept here. Like the forest knew I was here, and it didn't want me to leave. The 4th night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the kitchen, lights off, eyes on the window. That's when I heard it. A sound between a human moan and an animal in pain. Not close, but not far. Repeating, no rhythm. I stepped outside with my flashlight. Fog had blanketed the path, cold enough to numb my skin. I swept the light around. Nothing, but when I turned back, I saw something in the yard. A dead bird. Neck twisted backward. Eyes still open. Fresh blood. No drag marks, no fleeing footsteps. Just it, and me. I planned to leave the next morning, but the car wouldn't start. I popped the hood wires were chewed through. I knew nothing about engines. Just that I couldn't leave. I went back inside, packed my things, ready to walk to the highway. But when I got to the forest edge, something was wrong. The road was gone, not covered with leaves, gone completely. As if it had never been there. I walked deeper, weaving through familiar trees, but everything started repeating. A hollow oak, a fallen log with white mushrooms, a boulder with faded. Red marks like dried blood, over and over. Like I was trapped in a maze. By then, I knew I wasn't in an ordinary forest anymore. No map, no compass, no signal, no way out. And that night, the knocking came back. Still 3 knocks. But this time, it didn't stop at the door. Asterisk got backed away from the door. Heart pounding so hard it felt like it was punching through my chest. The 3 knocks came again. Then 3 more, but this time from the window. The kitchen window. I turned, eyes sweeping across the darkness outside, and for a split second, I saw a face. Not clearly shaped, just a patch of pale skin pressed against the glass, with deep black sunken eyes that didn't move. No motion. I stood there, unable to breathe, and then it vanished. No footsteps, no running sounds, just simply gone. I didn't sleep. I locked every door, barricaded them with furniture, and sat silently all night in the corner of the room, gripping a fruit knife. My eyes never left the front door. But nothing else happened. Just the forest whispering through. The cracks in the walls. The next morning, I stepped outside. The fog was so thick I couldn't see more than 10 feet ahead. But I decided to try again this time. I followed the sun. I remembered someone once said that if you walk toward where the sun rises, you'll reach the main road. I walked for hours, past dark trunks that looked half-burned, past wind shrieking through broken branches, past strange claw marks on trees, deep, even, like etched with purpose dot, and then I saw the cabin. The same cabin, even though I'd gone in a completely different direction. I tried to scream, but my throat locked up. Something was wrong here. I wasn't just lost, I was being kept. Like the forest itself didn't want me to leave. It was playing with me, leading me in circles, then throwing me back where I started. And when I stepped onto the wooden porch, I saw something new on the door. Dirty handprints stretched downward, as if someone had tried to hold on or knocked using their whole body. That night, I heard whispering. Not from outside, but inside. The cabin. Very faint, very close, somewhere above the ceiling. I climbed into the attic, flashlight in hand, heart trembling. Nothing but dust, rotten wood, and a sour, moldy smell. But when I turned around, the light swept past something. A broken mousetrap, and a piece of cloth. Small, torn, stained with dried blood, as if someone had once crawled through there. I pointed the flashlight more carefully, and this time I saw a vent, just big enough for a very thin person to squeeze through. I didn't say a word. I just slowly backed down, closed the attic hatch, and jammed it shut with the heaviest wooden chair I could find. I didn't eat, didn't sleep. I just sat and waited. And when I began to drift from exhaustion, it came. This time, no knocking, no footsteps. Just a suffocating sensation of being watched, strong enough to jolt me awake in the middle of the night, though I didn't know why. I opened my eyes, turned my head to look, and it was there, inside the room. Gaunt figure, taller than normal, its head nearly touching the ceiling, skin pale like bone, eyes solid black staring straight at me. I couldn't scream, I couldn't move, as if my body no longer belonged to me, as if it had been claimed by the forest. I woke up on the floor, morning light pouring in. No one was in the room, but there were wet footprints on the floor leading, from the door all the way to the edge of my bed. I didn't remember falling asleep or passing out. I remember nothing except that stare, still lodged in my skull. I packed everything, not because I hoped to escape, but because I couldn't survive another night in this place. I tore down the curtain, packed some dry biscuits, grabbed my lighter, and a bigger knife. I didn't follow the sun anymore. I picked a direction at random and went no matter what. I left the cabin behind me and walked as if the whole forest would collapse if I stopped. I passed through strange woods, some where the trees twisted around each other like knotted pain, some where all the leaves had fallen and only black trunks remained. At one point I thought I saw a person, but when I ran closer, there was only a shred of torn clothing caught on a branch. There was a child's laughter. There was breathing at the back of my neck. There was someone calling my name, but I never told anyone my name here. I kept walking until my feet bled, my throat burned dry, and my head spun. Then I passed out. And when I woke up, I was in a hospital bed, pale white light from fluorescent bulbs, the smell of antiseptic, the slow beeping of machines. An elderly nurse looked at me with pity. She said I was found near the main road, severely dehydrated, delusional, and physically worn down like someone who'd been wandering for days. The police found no cabin in the forest, no rental records like I claimed, no old woman with white hair and ash gray eyes living anywhere in that area. They gave me medication, sent me to a psychiatrist, and eventually let me go home with a warning: stay away from isolated places. But tonight, as I sit here writing this down, I hear knocking at the door. 3 knocks, soft, even and exactly the same as before. And I know it's found me again. Asterisk. Story 2. I came to this area because I wanted to get away from the city. Work, my ex, everything was weighing on me like a cold sludge, smothering me from the inside out. A friend let me borrow a small wooden cabin deep in the Appalachian woods, about a 2-hour drive from the nearest town. No Wi-Fi, no cell signal. Even the GPS gave out 10 minutes after turning off the main road. The first day passed quietly. I cooked instant noodles, read a book, sat on the porch, listening to birds and falling leaves. At night, the darkness was thick and absolute. No lights except for a small candle I kept on the table. I thought I'd feel lonely, but it turned out to be a relief. No one calling. No one asking for anything. No sense of being watched, until the third night, It was around 1 a.m. I woke up to a soft noise, like footsteps crunching on dry leaves. I figured it might be a deer. But then the sound came again, near the window, like someone was slowly walking around the cabin step by step. I turned off the light, stood still, tried to listen. The footsteps stopped. Total silence. Then came a knock. Light. 3 taps. I didn't open the door. Didn't go near the window. I just stood there, heart pounding, fingers digging into the edge of the table. There were no more sounds. I eventually dozed off just before dawn. When the sky turned gray dot the next morning, I went out to check. There were footprints, clearly human sneakers, pressed into the damp earth. They circled the cabin and disappeared into the woods. Nothing else left behind. I told myself maybe it was someone lost or homeless, but this place was too far from the main road, and there were no nearby trails. The 4th night, I didn't sleep. I turned the lights off early and sat in the dark with a metal rod from the kitchen. The wind was strong. The damp, musty smell of the forest seeped in through the cracks. Around 2 a.m., the footsteps came back, but this time, not around the house. On the roof, clear, light, and steady, like someone crawling. Then something dropped into the backyard, not loud, maybe like a small rock. But when I turned on the flashlight and looked out the window, I saw a shape, not quite human. Tall and thin, hunched over, back arched, head tilted like it was watching the cabin. I stepped back, unblinking. But that shape, it looked like me. Too much like me, wearing the exact clothes I'd worn the day before. Even the gray hoodie I'd left hanging on the porch. I couldn't see the face clearly, just pale skin and messy hair that looked like mine in the morning mirror. I didn't open the door, didn't scream. I just stood there, gripping the rod, until the darkness outside swallowed that figure whole. The next morning, I checked the camera I'd brought to take forest shots. I'd left it on the window ledge facing the backyard. In one of the nighttime photos, there was a figure, back turned, clearly visible. Gray hoodie, hair like mine, arms limp, bare feet, no face visible. It was looking away. But I knew it was me. That was my shape. On the 5th day, I tried to leave the cabin. I walked in the opposite direction from the driveway just to make sure I wasn't losing it. But the farther I went, the more wrong everything felt. The trees looked eerily alike. A tree stump with a cut I'd seen the day before showed up ahead again. I marked a trunk, turned left, then walked straight for another half hour. The same mark showed up again, and then I saw myself walking toward me. Not hurried, not rushing. I froze, staring at another version of me with an empty face, eyes unblinking. It wore exactly what I was wearing. Even held a rod just like mine, but there was blood on its shoulder, and it didn't speak. Just stepped forward, one slow step at a time. I ran by the time I got back to the cabin. It was almost dark. I slammed. The door locked everything, pushed a table in front of it. I peeked through the cracks but saw nothing. I didn't sleep. I no longer believed I was resting. I knew I was being replaced. Something in these woods is copying me. Every gesture, every habit, Maybe it's lived here for a long time, waiting for someone lonely like me to show up. It's learning how I move, how I think, and it's getting ready to take my place. I don't know if I leave, whether I'll really be the one who leaves. I'm not sure if the person writing this right now is even me anymore. Asterisk, I woke up because of the footsteps. At that moment, I was sitting against the wall, still not asleep. My eyes were open, but my mind felt disconnected, like I had just been unplugged. Every muscle was numb. And then those footsteps, very light, very steady, echoed. Across the wooden floor of the cabin, it was already inside. I don't remember forgetting to lock the door. I don't know when I fell asleep, but none of that mattered anymore. I didn't dare move. My neck was so tense it felt nailed to the wall. I tried to glance toward the hallway leading into the living room, and I thought it was me. I was standing there, but not the now me. It was me from 2 days ago, the old shirt with the coffee stain I spilled on my first day here, the jeans with frayed knees, even the way I stood, slightly hunched like I was trying to shrink away from attention. But the eyes weren't the same. Its eyes were wide open, unblinking, showing no reaction except to stare at me the way an animal sizes up something it's about to eat. I don't know where I found the strength. I jumped up, screamed, grabbed the knife on the table. But when I rushed to the door, the hallway was empty. No one there, no footprints, no sound. I turned on every light, trembling, checking every corner. But the cabin was too small for anyone to hide without me knowing. And then I saw the front door had been unlocked from the inside. I swear. I had blocked it with 2 chairs. I didn't sleep after that. That whole night, I just sat and wrote, documenting everything, every detail, every sensation as a way to hold on to myself. I needed proof that I had once been a normal person. I needed to preserve some part of my awareness because I could feel that thing seeping into me. Not through wounds, but through gaps in my memory. I couldn't clearly remember what I ate yesterday. Not sure if I brushed my teeth. There was a part of the afternoon I couldn't recall what I'd done, just that when I looked up. It was already dark, and worse, when I looked in the mirror, I began to feel like a stranger. Not obviously, just the expression. The eyes, as if the person in the mirror was imitating me, not reflecting me. The next morning, I packed my things. I didn't wait any longer. I headed straight into the forest without looking back at the cabin. I didn't want it to see me. I didn't follow the driveway, didn't use GPS. I followed instinct, went in a direction I'd never gone before. I thought, if everything's repeating, maybe I should do something unexpected. I kept walking and walking until my feet bled, my pants shredded by thorns. The sky began to rain. Cold, musty, as if the whole forest was melting around me. I fell, and this time, I heard it speak. Not out loud, but in my head, like a thought that wasn't mine. A voice hollow, emotionless, genderless. It didn't threaten, didn't scream. It just said, "You're not the first." Then images filled my mind, others. A bald man in a green sweater, sitting in the cabin, staring out the window. A young woman with black hair, curled under a blanket in the corner of the kitchen. A little boy couldn't be older than 10, wandering the woods holding a teddy bear. They all shared one thing, the same look of panic in their eyes before, being replaced. I forced myself up and kept walking, not knowing where I was heading. And when the sky began to glow ahead, I thought it was sunlight. I ran toward it like someone drowning. But as I stepped out past the final row of trees, I froze. In front of me was the cabin, exactly the same. Not a single detail different. The door was still open, the lights still on. I could hear water running from the sink. And worst of all, I was sitting inside, back turned to me as if I had never left. I had walked all day. But in the end, I came right back to where I tried to escape. It's not the forest that's playing with me. It's already part of me. Asterisk, I didn't step in right away. I stood at the edge of the woods in the rain, watching through the window. Inside, and my version was pouring water, the motion slow and deliberate like it had been done 1,000 times. Pale yellow light cast over its shoulders, the shadow stretching long across the wooden floor. The gesture was so painfully familiar, it made me feel like I was the one watching from outside, while it was the one who truly lived there. It lifted. The glass brought it to its lips, took a sip. In that exact moment, I saw its hand twitch slightly. A reflex, as if it had just realized something was off. I stepped back. A dry twig snapped beneath my foot. Very faint, but I saw its shoulders. Tense. Then it set the glass down and turned toward the window. Stared directly. At where I stood, there was no fear in its eyes, only recognition. I turned and ran. I don't know how long I ran for, only that the forest darkened so quickly it felt like the sun had been swallowed whole. I ran until my foot struck a root and I collapsed into a pit of mud. I scrambled back up, kept crawling, swiping away brambles, ignoring the torn skin on my hands. In the dark, I heard the footsteps behind me, sometimes near, sometimes far. Never hurried, as if it knew I would never get away. Eventually, I saw a blurry white light ahead. I ran straight toward it, mud splashing into my face, teeth chattering from the cold. I fell face first onto a paved road. It was real, an actual road. A car was coming. I screamed, waving like a madman. The car screeched to a halt. It was an older woman, silver hair, ash-colored eyes. I backed away, body twitching. But she only rolled down the window and spoke in a voice as light as the wind. "Where did you come from? Are you alright?" I couldn't answer. I just cried, not out of fear, but because I no longer knew what was real. I was taken to a hospital for the second time. The doctors said I was dehydrated, experiencing a nervous breakdown, possibly hallucinations from prolonged panic. They gave me more medication, told me to rest. No one believed my story. Was allowed to go home after 3 days. Everything felt so familiar it seemed wrong. The small rented apartment in the suburbs, wooden floors, window facing the backyard lawn. I showered, ate some cold soup, took my pills, then lay back on the sofa, trying to convince myself it was over. I drifted to sleep. When I woke up, the lights in the house were off. It wasn't a power outage. I could still hear the fridge humming, the heater running. It was just ... The light switches had been turned off. Someone had pressed them down. I sat up, reached for the knife in the nearby drawer, stepped into the hallway. The window was open. The curtain swayed gently. Cold air from outside poured in on the floor, muddy footprints, the kind that matched the soil in the forest. And when I looked up, I saw my own face staring back from the end of the hallway. Not in a mirror. It was real. It stood there, my hair, my clothes, my eyes, but hollow. So empty I understood. It didn't need to pretend to be me anymore. It was me now, and maybe I'm just one of many mez it has worn before. Story 3. I'm not the kind of person who easily believes in ghosts or the supernatural. The only thing that scares me is people. So when my friends invited me on a camping trip in the woods, I agreed without hesitation. The 4 of us, me, Marcus, Aaron, and Sean, chose a remote area up north with a small lake and a clearing in the middle of an old oak forest. No signal, no electricity, no foot traffic. Marcus found this spot through a Reddit group for wilderness enthusiasts, and they were all excited about disconnecting from modern society. To me, it just sounded like a weekend without emails or car horns. Not bad at all. We arrived on a cloudy Friday afternoon, a light drizzle, barely noticeable. We pitched our tents, built a fire, cooked some instant noodles, and sat around the flames telling random stories that didn't go anywhere. The mood was easy until Sean asked, "So, you guys noticed the tent's only big enough for 4, right?" Aaron laughed. "Yeah, because there are 4 of us." "No," Sean said, his voice quieter. "I mean ... did anyone leave camp earlier?" Because when I went to the edge of the woods to pee, I swear I saw someone else standing near the fire. Couldn't see the face. I thought it was Aaron, but when I came back, Aaron was already in the tent. We looked at each other. Marcus chuckled. "I think you smoked a bit too much, man." No one said anything after that. But that night, when we were all in our tents, I couldn't sleep. There were footsteps outside. Not hurried, not heavy. Just someone circling the camp. I unzipped my tent slightly and peeked out. Nothing, just forest. I zipped it back up, pulled my blanket over my head, and told myself I was imagining it. The next morning, Marcus was gone. Our 3 tents were pitched in a triangle, and we left our backpacks outside. But Marcus's pack was still there. His tent was open, empty inside. No signs of struggle, no shouting during the night. We split up to search, calling his name through the woods. No response. The deeper we went, the colder and damper the air became, like some invisible fog threading. Through the trees, around noon, I returned to camp, and my heart almost gave out. There was a new backpack sitting next to Marcus's tent. Not one of ours. Older. Mossy green, stained with dried mud. Zipper rusted. I called Aaron and Sean over, asked if they saw it. Aaron shook her head. Sean went pale. I've seen that pack before. When we were scouting for a spot, we passed a tree with an old jacket hanging on it. This bag was lying under it. That night, no one wanted to sleep. We built up the fire, huddled close, each of us holding a stick or a kitchen knife. From the woods, we heard something. Not an animal, knocking on the trees. 3 knocks, then silence. Then 3 more, from another direction. Aaron clutched my hand ice cold. I glanced at Sean and saw him staring into the woods, unblinking. I was about to say something when Sean stood up. Suddenly, Marcus, he said. I hear Marcus. I tried to stop him, but he tore free and ran into the forest. His footsteps faded. I chased after him, but lost his trail quickly. The trees were dense, the moonlight too faint to light the way. I returned to camp alone. Aaron was standing there, trembling. I asked, "Did you see anything?" Aaron nodded. "Someone walked around the camp when you chased after Sean." "Not Sean, not Marcus." I asked, "Did you see their face?" She shook her head. "No, but I counted shadows. 4, including me." I held my breath. "There's only 2 of us left." She looked at me. That's why it didn't make sense. The next morning, I woke up alone. Aaron's tent had been ripped open. No signs of a struggle. Just a message carved into a nearby tree. Very shallow, very straight. Only one may leave. I didn't try to find anyone after that. I gathered all the food I could, left everything else behind, and started running. No trails, no map. Just running. Through dry creeks, twisted roots, and sounds that didn't belong to anything human. I don't remember how many times I fell. Just that by nightfall, I saw a pale yellow light in the distance. A small cabin, old, smoke rising from its chimney. I knocked on the door. An old man answered, looked at me like he'd been waiting. He didn't ask anything, just gestured for me to come in. I slept there that night, while I ate hot soup and wrapped myself in a blanket. He asked only one question. How many came this time? There were 4 of us, I said. He nodded, as if confirming something. The next morning, when I woke up, the cabin was empty. No old man, no signs anyone had ever lived there. Just a decaying house, leaky roof, rotten walls, nothing left. But a crooked mirror on the wall. I looked into it and I didn't see myself. I saw a figure behind me, faceless, eyeless, but smiling. Story 4. My ex-wife and I visited this lake last fall, back when things between us hadn't yet fallen apart. We only stayed one night. By morning, she said she felt something was off, like we were being watched. So I didn't push her. We left before even having breakfast. 6 months later, we divorced, not because of what happened in the woods, but because of things that had been simmering for too long. Things neither of us wanted to say out loud. Last week, while searching online for a new camping spot, I saw that name again, Machin Lake, deep inside the national forest. Barely mentioned anywhere, with just a few scattered reviews from deleted accounts. This time, I went alone. Not to reminisce. I just needed to step away from life, from the whirring printers and cold concrete floors of the office. I arrived at the lake on a Saturday afternoon. The sky was clear, and the air was so still it felt like the place existed outside of time. No reception, no GPS signal, just the soft lapping of water on the grassy shore, and the forest standing silent around me. I set up camp near the edge of the lake, on flat ground with no signs that anyone had camped there before. When I was done, I went down to the water to wash my face. The water was so clear I could see every pebble on the lake bed. But as I leaned down, something chilled me to the core. There was no reflection, no shadow, no image, just the empty surface of the lake. I stepped back, thinking it must be the angle or the light. But no matter where I went along the shore, my reflection never showed. The trees, the clouds, everything else mirrored perfectly, just not me. That night, I couldn't sleep. Something kept me awake. Not a noise, but the silence. A silence. So perfect it felt wrong. No insects, no wind, not even the tiniest sound. Like the whole forest was holding its breath. I sat up, turned on my flashlight, and shined it outside. Nothing. But when I pointed it toward the lake, I saw someone standing. In the water, upright, motionless, no more than 10 meters from shore. The water reached their chest, hair hanging long over their face, skin pale like it had been dusted with frost. I stumbled backward, not believing what I saw. When I shined the light again, they were gone. No ripples, no sound. The lake was smooth. Again, like glassed up the next morning. I searched the shore for footprints. Nothing. No signs that anyone had been there. I considered leaving, but my car was nearly a mile away through the forest, and part of me couldn't walk away without an answer. Not yet. I stayed another night. That was a mistake. Around midnight, I heard water, faint, like someone stepping into the lake. I unzipped the tent, but no one was there. Just wet footprints leading from the water's edge to near my tent, each step perfectly spaced. I looked around, heart pounding like a war drum. No one. But I could feel something approaching, not with a body, but with intention. A slow, cold, deliberate presence. I built the fire higher. Sat right beside it. My hunting knife lay within reach. I didn't sleep. Near dawn, I returned to the lake. The sky was still gray, the mist thick, but the lake remained calm. I stood there, trying to see my reflection again. And this time, a shadow appeared. But it wasn't mine. It was a figure standing behind me, in the water. No face, no eyes. Just a solid black shape dense, like wet coal. I spun around. Nothing. When I looked back at the lake, the figure was still there, unmoving. I ran. Didn't break camp. Didn't take anything. I ran like a madman through the woods, fell 3 times, scraped my knees bloody, but I never stopped. When I reached the car, I jumped in, locked the doors, started the engine even though my hands were shaking. I didn't look, I didn't check the rearview mirror. I made it home. But ever since, I can't look in a mirror for more than a few seconds, because every time I do, I see a shape passing behind me. A shadow, just behind my shoulder. I live alone. Number, balcony. But each morning, the floor has wet footprints, leading from the bathroom to the window. And when I worked up the courage to revisit the website where I first found Vachan Lake, the post was gone. The entire Reddit group vanished. As if it had. Never existed. There's only me. And the thing that followed me back from the lake with no reflection. Story 5. I'm not entirely sure why I agreed to this trip with my old college friends. Maybe after that drawn-out winter breakup, I just needed silence. The 4 of us, me, Kyle, Ben, and Marcus, went to the same university. We'd done a few camping trips back in college, but it had been 10 years since we last saw each other. Marcus picked the location, Shasta Trinity National Forest, way up in Northern California. Far from any main road, no cell signal, practically untouched. He said there was an old, faded trail left by loggers back in the 70s that led to a small plateau, with a stream clean and quiet enough to let every wound disappear. We packed enough supplies for 3 nights. The first day passed smoothly. Campfire, light drinks, old laughter. But the next morning, while Kyle was out gathering wood, He froze in the middle of the forest, pointing up into the trees. We ran over. There was a body hanging from a high branch. It didn't look like a suicide. No rope, no signs of hanging. Just a person, thing, naked, skin mottled with bruises, suspended by both arms, like they'd been hooked onto the branch. Face tilted toward the sky. No smell, no flies. No sign of decomposition, though it was clearly a corpse. Ben wanted to leave immediately. Marcus argued. The nearest police station was 15 miles away. We couldn't alert them in a day. Then we started arguing. I stayed quiet, but something stirred in my gut, as if that body wasn't just a shock, but a warning, as if it was staring toward something we hadn't seen yet. That night, the fire burned larger than usual. No one spoke much. We each sat strangely, apart, like we were afraid whatever was wrong might spread between us if we got too close. Around midnight, while I was peeing behind the tent, I heard something in the trees, a sound like metal scraping bark. Slow, rhythmic, distant, and cold. I shone my light around. Nothing. When I returned to the tent, Ben was no longer in his sleeping bag. It was still open, flat, like no one had ever laid inside. I figured he'd gone to pee too. Then a scream echoed from deep in the woods hoarse and brief. We ran to find him. Marcus had a headlamp. Kyle carried a knife. I had a small flashlight. Just a few hundred meters in, we stopped. Ben was standing in a forest clearing, neck tilted back, staring. Up exactly like the body in the tree. Not moving, not responding. When Marcus stepped closer, Ben suddenly said, "I get it now." Then he turned and walked into the dark. No one dared stop him. He just vanished. We chased after him, but couldn't keep up. It was like Ben had dissolved. Into the forest when we made it back to camp, everything was gone. The tents, our gear, food, backpacks, like none of it had ever been there. Just our own footprints circling the space. And on a nearby tree, the second body had appeared, just a few dozen feet from the first one. Looking closely, it was Ben. Marcus started laughing. A strange, unnatural laugh. He said, "Don't you see? This isn't a forest. It's a vault. A place you come to get hung up if you bring your memories with you." Kyle bolted. I ran after him, but lost him in the woods. When I returned, Marcus was gone too. I was alone among the trees. No tent, no friends, no light. I slept at the base of a tree. Because there was nothing else to do. The next morning, I woke up with sunlight in my eyes. All our stuff was back like the night before it had never happened. Tents, backpacks, fire, ring. But no people, no Kyle, no Marcus, no Ben. I ran to the tree where the body had been hanging. It was empty. I eventually found my way out. The police didn't find my friends. No bodies. They said I was in shock, probably got lost in the woods and imagined everything. I wanted to believe that too, until last week, when I started dreaming about being hung in a tree. Each night, the dream lasts a few seconds longer. Each time, I see more clearly the image of my own skin being hooked onto a branch by something claw-like. It doesn't hurt. It's just cold. I don't go anywhere anymore. I don't step into the woods, but I know that if I don't write down what happened, no one will believe it. And one day, when I step outside just to take out the trash or grab a coffee, I'll look up at a random tree in the middle of the city and see myself hanging. They're still breathing, still aware, but never able to come down again. Story 6. I never thought that hiking through a forest could change a person forever. It started as a stupid idea during a drunken night, when Andrew, my best friend from college, pulled out a map and pointed a dark green patch of forest in western Oregon. No roads, no signal, no ranger stations, just an empty space between mountain ranges. "No one's dared to go here," he said, grinning like it was a challenge. I remember nodding, maybe trying to prove something, but truthfully, I had nothing left to lose after a nasty divorce and a job contract had just been terminated. I needed out of life. That forest felt like the perfect place to disappear for a while. There were 3 of us, me, Andrew and his new girlfriend, Kate. They were both a few years younger, energetic, eager to explore. We brought tents, dried food, GPS, paper maps, survival knives, everything well prepared. But on that first evening, as we set up camp on the forest edge, something felt off. Not because of the cold or the rugged terrain. It was the sense that we weren't welcome. No birds, no insects, just wind slipping through the leaves and a thick silence lingering beneath the moss-covered trees. I told myself I was imagining things, but that night, lying in the tent, I heard footsteps. Not fast, not sneaky. Slow, measured, circling the campsite. I sat up, grabbed my flashlight, pointed it outside. Nothing there. Andrew said I was paranoid. Kate laughed. I laughed, too, but inside, I was frozen. The next day, we went deeper. Andrew found a narrow trail that wasn't on the map. He said we should check it out just for a few hours and then head back. I didn't want to, but they'd already walked ahead. I followed. That was where the mistake began. The path was narrow. Thick woods on both sides, air damp and stale, like walking underground. Around noon, the GPS started glitching. The compass spun endlessly, then my watch died. No signal, no way back. When we decided to return, the trail behind us was gone buried under leaves, like the forest had stitched its wound shut. Kate began to panic. Andrew tried to stay calm, but I saw his hands shaking when he opened his pocket knife. We set up camp. Again for the night. No one slept. The footsteps returned. Still slow, still steady, but closer this time. And then I heard whispering, very faint, right next to my ear. No clear words, just the sound of someone trying to call from behind my neck. I shot up, flashlight in hand, no one there. But Andrew was gone the next morning, not just me and Kate now. His tent was untouched, backpack still there, but his sleeping spot was empty. As if he'd flown off into the night without a trace. Kate started crying. I tried to lead her in the opposite direction, but the forest had changed. Every step brought US to a new scene, never repeating, never progressing. No sunlight, just a pale, cold glow with no source. We walked until we couldn't anymore. Then I heard Andrew's voice, clear as day, "Come back." I turned. No one there, but Kate ran toward the sound. I shouted, but she vanished into the trees like they'd pulled her in. I didn't follow. I stood there, trembling, then turned, and walked the other way. Not out of courage, but because I knew that voice wasn't Andrew. The tone was too flat, too emotionless. Like a recording on repeat. I don't remember how long I walked. Each night, I camped at the base of a tree. And each night, the voice came back, calling my name. First it was Andrew, then Kate, then my mother, in the voice she had when she was alive, then my own voice. Calling from somewhere far off, sounding exactly like me, but cold and hollow. Eventually I saw a light. It was the flashlight of a rescue team. They found me near an abandoned lookout post. I'd lost half my body weight, feet blistered, lips cracked. They asked me about the people I went in with. I gave their names. They just looked at each other. There was no report of them. No record that I'd registered entry with a group. They only found me. Alone. No second tent. No extra footprints. No evidence. I'm home now. But I dream of the forest every night. They're not dreams, really. I'm standing there, watching Kate walk deeper in, and Andrew turning to look at me, his eyes black like charcoal. I don't leave the house after dark. I turn off all the lights, but last night, from the window in the backyard, I heard footsteps. Slow, steady, and then I heard my own voice rising from the darkness, calling my name soft as breath among the trees. Come back. Asterisk, I didn't open the window. I didn't step outside either. I stood pressed against the wall, holding my breath, listening as the slow footsteps came to a stop in the backyard. There was a long silence, so long I began to think I'd imagined everything. But then I heard a soft scraping on the glass, not fingernails, but something sharp, cold, like metal dragging across a mirror. I wanted to run, but my body was frozen, just like it had been in the forest. And then the voice came again. Still my voice, but this time it said something different. You're still here. I screamed and passed out in the kitchen. When I came to, it was morning. No one in the yard. The window wasn't broken. No footprints. No scratches. I told myself it was paranoia, PTSD, anxiety disorder. That's what all the doctors had said. But there's one thing I haven't told anyone every morning. I find dry twigs placed right outside my door, tied together into strange, twisted shapes. Crude, warped symbols that look like they were made by trembling hands. No one else sees. Them but me. I once brought one to the police station. They just looked at it and shook their heads, saying it was some neighborhood kids playing a prank. But what kid would know I'd gone into that forest? After a week, I started noticing things out of place in the house. The bathroom mirror got foggier each day, like someone was breathing on it from the inside. The curtain I clearly remember. Drawing shut would be wide open every morning. There were wet handprints in the kitchen sink, like someone had stood there during the night. I installed cameras. But every time I checked the footage, it would glitch around 3 a.m. just a black screen and the sound of wind hissing through the speakers. I saw a psychiatrist. Told him I still felt like I was in the forest. He nodded and prescribed more sedatives. But there was something odd in his eyes, as if he knew, but wouldn't say it. On his desk was an old map, and I recognized that same stretch of forest, faintly circled in red. In the corner, written in tiny pencil marks, were the words, "Unconfirmed signal lost, missing, 6." I asked him about it. He dodged the question, said it was part of an old research file. I didn't press him further. But on my way out, I snapped a photo with my phone. That night, I dreamed I was walking in the forest again. Not a memory. I could actually feel the mulch under my feet, hear the wind whistling through the canopy. I couldn't control my body. It was walking on its own toward something. And then I saw Andrew not far off, standing still. He had no face, just a black void where it should have been, stretched taut with thin skin. He reached out toward me, and from that empty space where a mouth should have been, I heard my own voice say, "You're still here?" I woke up soaked in sweat, collar damp, and at the foot of my bed mud tracks, clearly visible, brownish gray, as if someone had stood there watching me sleep. I couldn't take it anymore. I dug up the map Andrew and I had used, compared it with the photo I took at the psychiatrist's office. I found the overlap section near the base of the mountains, no longer marked on the new maps, but faintly outlined on the old one. I rented a car, brought only the essentials, not to escape, but to return. I understood now. I had never really left that forest. Part of me was still trapped there, stretched across time, across dreams, across fear. And if I didn't go back, it would come and take what was left. When I arrived, night had already fallen. The forest looked different, but the old trail emerged ahead of me like it had been waiting. No birds, no wind, only the sound of twigs snapping under my feet and the rising thump of my own heartbeat. I didn't stop. I walked straight in. The moment I saw decayed remains of the old tenta, moldy frame of fabric sunken into a clearing, I knew I was in the right place, and this time, I wasn't afraid. I stood there, breathing slowly, eyes closed, and I whispered, "I've come back." From behind the trees, the footsteps began, no longer scattered, but steady, many, encircling me from all directions. Something was coming. Not one, not two. But everything I had left behind, I opened my eyes, they were looking at me, and I smiled. Asterisk guy stood in the middle of their silent circle. Tall, gaunt figures, gray shadows with no distinct faces, but all sharing one thing in common. Deep black eyes that seemed to drain every trace of light around them. They didn't speak. They didn't move. They just stared at me quietly, as if waiting. I don't know what kept me from panicking at that moment. Maybe I was too exhausted to feel fear anymore. Or maybe in some deep part of me, I had always known it would come to this. I raised my arms, not in surrender, but like I was offering myself. I wanted to understand. I wanted an end. I wanted to know why this forest wouldn't let go. One of them stepped forward, slowly, dragging its long limbs, nearly 1.5 times my height. When it stopped in front of me, I realized it wasn't a stranger, not Andrew, not me, but a disturbing fusion of both its face, a shifting blend of familiar and foreign, features smearing and reassembling, trembling under thin, ashen skin. From inside its chest, a sound emerged, not a voice, but an echo of hundreds layered together. Tangled and bleeding into words, we are the ones who got lost, and no one came looking. I trembled, my mouth dry. I couldn't say a word. You saw the way out, but you came back. You carried the memory of the forest with you, and now the forest has come to reclaim it. I took a step back. Behind me, I could feel the circle, closing those shadowy figures, sealing every exit. There was no way out. The forest doesn't take anyone. It only keeps those who carry it with them. And I understood. All the whispers, the images in the mirror, the twig symbols at my door, they weren't something following me. They were fragments of the forest I hadn't let go of. I had opened the door for them to return. I had dragged the forest beyond. Its borders, I knelt. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I only asked, then what do I do now? The figure stepped closer, leaned in, its black eyes like a void pulling me under. You will become part of the path, so that others like you will. No, they are not alone. And then I felt my body dissolve. It didn't hurt, just cold. A cold that started in my bones and spread through every hair on my head. My hands vanished, my vision faded, but I could still hear, still feel, still know who I was, even without a form. I saw my face, my old face, looking up at me from the ground. I had merged with the forest, become a faint path, a breath of wind in the night, a streak of mud at the doorstep, a shape flickering in someone's sleep. I was no longer me, but I was still here, Dot, and if one day you go camping deep in the woods where there's no cell signal, no clear trail on any map, and you come across a narrow path, barely visible, just a worn trace through the thick trees, remember this: don't step onto it, because that's me, and I'm still waiting. Story 7. I started that trip because I needed to prove something. Not because I loved nature or was searching for peace in the wilderness. I needed to know if there was anything left in my life that I still had control over. 35 years old, jobless, fresh out of a long-term relationship, and feeling like the whole world had turned its back on me. Hiking wasn't a solution. It was just a way to push myself to the edge. If I collapsed, there wouldn't be much left to regret. But if I survived, maybe I'd believe I still had a grip on who I was. The trip was meant to last 3 days, cutting through a section of the mountain range inside a national preserve in Oregon. I prepared carefully: paper maps, compass, handheld, GPS, 5 days worth of dried food, reserve water, first aid kit, folding knife, flashlight, spare batteries. I didn't underestimate the wilderness. I just no longer valued myself. The first day was smoother than I expected. Clear skies, crisp air that made it easy to breathe. The trail was well marked. I walked past towering pines, gravel-covered paths, streams that ribboned across the land like silver under the mountain's shadow. I paused sometimes to look up at the peak shrouded in mist, wondering why something as cold and indifferent as stone could make people feel liberated. I camped that first night beside a small creek. The campfire burned calmly. I listened to the wind rustling through the trees, the distant call of night birds. No one around. No cars, no phones, no people. And for the first time in months, my mind went quiet. The second day, it rained. Light, steady, unrelenting. I wrapped myself in a rain poncho and kept climbing. Everything began to incline more sharply, and the trail narrowed, but the GPS still showed I was on course. I wasn't worried around midday, as I crossed a clearing with fallen trees blocking the way. I noticed something wrong. The trail had vanished, not gradually as if it had never been there. I backtracked, retraced my steps, but found no trace of the path. The GPS signal flickered, and the paper map no longer matched the terrain in front of me. I tried returning to the previous section, but the trees seemed different, thicker, closer, unfamiliar at the time. I thought I'd only veered off by a few steps. Forest can deceive the eye. I marked a few trees and tried circling around to locate the main trail again. But no matter what direction I took, I kept seeing the same marked trunks. Even though I was sure I'd changed course, that's when panic crept in. I wasn't a seasoned expert, but I knew basic first aid, could read maps, and had hiked plenty before. But this time, nothing aligned. The GPS went completely dead. The compass spun erratically. I set up my tent early, ate my last packet of instant noodles, and told myself I'd find my way back in the morning, no matter what. That second night, the dark was heavier than usual. No moon, no stars, just a dense, suffocating black that hung over the forest like thick cloth. I woke up in the middle of the night to a sound, like someone scratching the nylon of my tent. Not loud, gentle, but rhythmic. I grabbed my flashlight, unzipped the flap, scanned the area. Nothing but mist and drizzle. But when I turned back, I saw a muddy handprint smeared across the tent wall about chest height. 5 fingers. The next morning I had a slight fever. Could have been the cold or maybe the disorientation finally catching up. I finished my last ration and began walking. I didn't care about maps anymore. Just moved in one direction, hoping to hit a road, a river, any sign of people. But the deeper I went, the more the forest seemed to close in. The ground was soft, like wet clay. I passed through a hollow where the trees bent unnaturally, all leaning the same way as if pulled towards some invisible center. And when I emerged into a clearing, I saw my tent, the same one I had pitched the night before. The muddy handprint still visible. But I had walked for nearly a full day in. A completely different direction. I collapsed to the ground. Didn't cry, just felt hollow, like something had reached inside and wrung out everything. I thought about setting fire to the tent, the trees, anything to break whatever loop I was stuck in. But I didn't. I just lay there, too tired to care anymore. That night, I didn't sleep. I heard whine, but it wasn't wind. It carried voices. Human, not clear, not near, not far. Just close enough for me to know I was surrounded got by morning. I didn't remember falling asleep. But when I opened my eyes, I was lying on a gravel road. A real one worn down by tires, with fresh tracks in the dirt. In the distance, a pickup. Truck was slowly approaching. I stumbled into its path, waving my arms like a lunatic. The driver, an old man, looked at me through the window. He didn't ask me any questions. He just told me to get in. Then he said, "You're the third one this month I've seen coming out of that forest." I asked, which part? I only followed the main hiking trail. He stared at me for a long moment before replying, "There's no trail on that side. Hasn't been marked on any map for over 10 years. People went missing there. We never found them." I said nothing more. Just sat in the back of his truck, my mind blank. And as we rounded a bend in the road, I looked back, all I saw were trees. No tent, no footprints. No sign I'd ever been there at all. Story 8. I started working as a logger after losing both of my previous jobs in just 6 months. Not because I liked the forest or enjoyed physical labor, but because I needed money and was running out of options. Timber North hired by the week and didn't ask too many questions about the past or why a guy who used to work in an office wanted to carry a chainsaw deep into the woods every day. I told them I needed the job. They nodded that the forest I was assigned to was in the northern part of Washington State, nearly a 2-hour drive from the nearest town and largely untouched. Some areas were old growth, and people said that tribes once lived there, now long vanished. A few guys on the crew joked that they'd heard singing at night or seen flashes of fire in the fog, but I didn't believe it. The forest is just forest. It's not good, it's not bad. It just is. What scares people is the darkness and the silence. I knew that because I'd once been afraid of the silences in my own life. On the first day, I was assigned my own section, a long, overgrown trail. Leading deeper in, the foreman said, "Watch out for the old ones. Cut at the wrong angle and they'll fall back on you." I nodded, took my saw, and got started. Every time the blade bit into a trunk, a deep vibration ran through my hands. That sound, harsh, steady, was the only thing filling the emptiness in my head at the time. Around noon, I was cutting through a massive ash tree, nearly a meter wide. As it fell, I heard a strange sound, not the crash of wood hitting earth, but something that sounded like a low moan. I stopped and turned. No one was there, just mist and long tree shadows on damp soil. I told myself it was wind through a hollow, maybe the echo of the impact. Forests are full of noises you can't explain, but by late afternoon, I heard it again. Not once, but several times. Every time a big tree fell, I heard it. A sound like groaning or weeping. Quiet, almost a whisper, as if someone was buried beneath the roots, and I just couldn't see them. I took off my ear protection, stood still, trying to isolate it. Nothing, just wind and leaves. But this time, I noticed something different at the base of a nearby tree, like a mark. I stepped closer. Beneath the layer of lichen clinging to the bark were grooves, as if scratched by fingernails. No clear pattern, but deep and repeated. I tried slicing a bit with my knife. Under the bark, the wood was a strange color. Not the usual grayish yellow, but a deep black, like it had been slowly burning from the inside. I stepped back. I didn't tell the crew anything that day, just said I felt tired. Back at camp, I lay awake. I couldn't sleep. Something had followed. Not a shadow, a sound. Even with my eyes closed, I could hear the moaning, distant but steady, like a saw, but reversed, as if someone was cutting upward from underground dot the next day. I was reassigned to a different section. But as soon as the first tree came down, I heard it again. That same sound. I stopped, scanned the area. A squirrel darted past. A blackbird perched on a high branch, silent, just watching. And then I saw it, in the roots of the fallen tree. A small hollow. Inside was something that looked like bone. Not sure what kind. Small, but long. No skull, no signs of animal predation. Just a fragment of white bone embedded in the rotting core of the wood. I went back to camp and reported it to the foreman. He frowned and said, "Might be deer bones. Sometimes animals die and trees grow around them." I asked, "What about the moaning when the trees fall?" He didn't answer. Just told me to take the next day off, wait for a supervisor to check the site. That night, I packed. Plan 2. Leave in the morning. But sometime during the night, I woke up and I wasn't in my tent. I was lying in the forest. No flashlight. No fire. No chainsaw. Just a layer of cold mud across my chest. In my ears was the sound of sawing, but this time it was real. Very close. Like someone cutting into the roots right beneath me. I bolted upright and ran, stumbling. I didn't know where I was heading. But behind me, I heard something fall. Not a tree, heavier, deeper dot the next morning. The crew found me curled up near the trail. I had no memory of how I got back. I had a fever. They drove me into town. I didn't say anything about the bone, or the sounds, or the hollow in the tree. 2 weeks later, I read in the paper that another logging team found human remains while felling an old tree in the same forest. Police investigated and concluded the bones had been inside the trunk for decades. The tree had grown around them, completely enclosing the remains. No explanation why. No missing persons reports matched. I never went back to the forest. Never cut wood again. But sometimes when I sleep, I still hear that sound, faint. A soft, steady moaning. Like someone trapped inside a tree, and every time the blade touches the wood, they're screaming for someone to stop.